It's another mailbag day. The Dodgers had a day off. That's what's coming up on Locked On Dodgers. We'll talk about trade deadline, talk about a potential outfielder for the Dodgers, and some new prospects in the top 100. We'll get into all that. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And make it easy on yourself and subscribe in each or both of those places. And never miss a day because, we're not going to. And if you're like us and never miss a day, that means you're an everydayer. So clap for yourself. You're an everydayer. You should be proud. If this is your first time listening or watching, you can become an everydayer by just listening every day. And you should know that I'm Vince Samperio, and that's my co-host, Jeff Snider. We're both lifelong Dodger fans that have spent time covering the team, have watched the Dodgers all over, watched the Dodgers, a lot of Dodger games in our lives. And we're not quite insiders, but we're here to bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. And Dodgers were off on Monday, so we put out a call for mailbag. The Dodgers had a lot of off days the last couple weeks, so I feel like maybe we're running out of mailbag questions, but we still got some good ones. But we're going to start off with something that wasn't in the mailbag. But before that, Jeff, you got anything from you want to?
I just want to shout out one everydayer, Craig Rogers. Comments a lot on our YouTube channel and let us know he's an everydayer. So thanks, Craig. You're awesome.
Appreciate you, Craig. So this morning there was a report. It didn't link anyone to the Dodgers specifically, but it did link someone that the Dodgers could be interested in. Andrew McCutchen was a name that John Morosi was reporting that he reported that the Rangers were exploring the possibility. I forget the exact wording, but basically the Pirates, and then he added basically the Pirates are deciding, are they going to sell what they wanted to trade McCutchen in the year that he went back to the Pirates and everything else. But Andrew McCutchen is somebody that would fit the profile for someone the Dodgers could use at the deadline or even before the deadline. So, yeah, Jeff, I mean, obviously, I think we're both fans of McCutchen in general, but would it work for the Dodgers and what would it take to get him?
Yeah, McCutchen is one of my favorite people in baseball. Not much not to like about Andrew McCutchen as a person, and as a player, he is pretty darn good this year. He's been playing basically full time for the Pirates, and he has an 825 OPS. Included in that is 843 OPS against left-handed pitching, and left-handed pitching is something that McCutchen has always hit well throughout his career. His career OPS against lefties is 932, and really, other than last year and 2016, every other year of his career, he's been very good against lefties, and so. With the Dodgers' needs, we've talked about how because of Mookie Betts, they could go after an outfielder instead of a shortstop because Mookie Betts could be that shortstop. And so Andrew McCutchen would fit really, really well on this team. I love Andrew McCutchen, and I don't know that he's like a game changer, but I also think because he's not necessarily a game changer, I don't think that the Dodgers would have to give up a ton because McCutchen is almost 37 years old. He's going to be 37 in October. So he is on the downswing of his career. This is his second stint with the Pirates. Obviously he's a legend in Pittsburgh. They love him there. But I don't think the Dodgers have to break the bank for him. And he might be the kind of guy who makes a lot of sense for the Dodgers, because we've talked about how the Dodgers probably need to make some trades. We'll probably talk more about that in this episode, because most of our questions today are about the trade deadline. The Dodgers, they've got such a glut of prospects that, McCutchen is a guy, if they can make a handful of moves for guys like McCutchen, where you don't have to give up the top tier talent, but you give up, a couple prospects of lesser, resume for a guy like McCutchen, he could be a huge, good fit for the Dodgers. And there's not a ton of African-American players left in baseball, and having Mookie Betts and Jason Hayward and Andrew McCutchen all on the same team would whoever it would break Daniel Brem's mind. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, McCutchen fits in more than one way. He fits on the field, he fits off the field, he would fit in the clubhouse. He'd be that kind of guy, that type of guy. And he's having a really good year for the Pirates over there, an OPS 825. Uh, he would help the Dodgers in more than one way. And the other part of it is we've kind of seen the market for hitters in the last week, thanks to the Angels. They made a couple of trades. They gave up, I think, their 19 and 20 prospect for Eduardo Escobar, which their number 19 and number 20 prospect are probably like the Dodgers 35th to 40th, prospects. So we're getting that deep for a guy like Escobar, who not as good as McCutchen, so obviously it might cost a little bit more, but that's kind of where it's at. And I feel like the earlier you get into into the stakes, the better for you. They also traded. I had to think real quick. I'm like, I don't think Rob Van Scoyoc has a kid that I don't. He's pretty young. I don't think he had a kid that's already in the minors because they traded a Van Scoyoc for Mike Moustakas as well. And I don't know where he landed on the Angels prospects, but again, probably not that much. So, but those guys aren't on the scale of McCutchen. But again, you slight that scale up a little bit. You look at the Dodgers. 25 to number 25, number 30 prospect somewhere in there. Who I don't know who that is off the top of my head, but that's somebody that could go after for McCutchen. Again, I don't. It's kind of weird, like the Pirates, because they started good and it was a fun story. McCutchen was back and everything else, and now they're deciding, do we want to trade him? And I think it's going to come down to, does he want to get traded? Does he want to just stick? Does he know this might be his last year and he wants to stick it out in Pittsburgh and go that route, or does he think, what, I want a chance to win a championship, or if there's a deal that benefits you, Pirates GM, go ahead and do it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, the Pirates, after starting off really, really well, they're 7 games under 500. They're in 4th place in a bad division. So, it makes sense. Not necessarily to sell like a full sale because they have a lot of young players. I don't think Brian Hayes is going anywhere. But a guy like McCutchen, it makes a lot of sense. Another thing that I meant to mention about McCutchen is I feel like he fits as a Dodger. His approach at the plate, he takes his walks. He doesn't strike out a ton. Really taking the walks is the big thing. He'll pass the baton. He can drive in runs, and like I hope that Andrew Friedman saw those reports that Andrew McCutchen's available and immediately got on the phone with whoever the Pirates general manager is. Who is it? Ben Cherington, maybe. Whoever it is, I hope that he got Ben Cherington. Hope he got on the phone with him and said, "Hey, I want Andrew McCutchen. What do you want for him? Because maybe that's our corresponding move for something. I don't know. Make it happen, Andrew. That's what I'm saying."
Yeah, it's possible. And when you think of like McCutchen, you think of the Pirates, you try to be like, okay, who else is on that roster that maybe the Dodgers could go after? And I don't think there's much in the way of game impact, big time impact guys. You do look at starting pitcher and you do look at reliever and you see a name like David Bednar, who would be expensive in the sense that he still has 3 years of team control. You also see a guy like Rich Hill, get Dick Mountain back at Dodger Stadium. You wouldn't be upset at that. So like there's also a way they can try to kill a couple birds with one stone in trading with the Pirates. I don't see it for Bednar just because they would have to pay a lot for a reliever, and relievers, you never know if he's going to be good next year or even this year. But I could see them saying, "Hey, you know what? We'll take Rich Hill and maybe we'll throw in another prospect on the back end."
Yeah, I'm not on the Rich Hill train. I loved Rich Hill when he was on the Dodgers, but no thanks on that. I am all aboard the David Bednar train, but I don't know that the Pirates are going to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do the Rich Hill thing is just literally innings based, that you hope that he's healthy, because they are going to have to give some of these young guys probably a breather at some point. But
yeah,
there's other guys out there that can fit that mold. All right, we'll get into the actual questions that you guys provided us and more trade deadline stuff. We'll talk about some other ideas for the Dodgers, what they can do. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home and win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. We're back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to check out SiriusXM or the SXM app if you want to listen to the home broadcast for any Dodger game. All you got to do is search Dodgers, and you can listen to the home broadcast for any Dodger game. You can also find us on there if you search Locked On Dodgers. And remember, if you're an everydayer, you know where you can find us. And if you're not an everydayer, you can find us where we find podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Dodgers. Let's hop right into these questions. And we're going to pair one question with a little bit of news. Our question from our buddy Kevin at Blue Goon 82. He says, seems like we have a lot more holes on the roster than past seasons. We need a starting pitcher, relief pitcher, and a bat. It might be time to trade some prospect depth. What prospects, young guys, do you think might be traded? He adds, I'm hoping we can get some type of value for Stone and Vargas. We pair this with the updated prospect rankings from MLB Pipeline, where the Dodgers have 9 players in the top 100. They have 9%, almost 10% of the top prospects in the 100. Bobby Miller is now top 10 prospect. He's at number 9. Of course, that won't last long the more he pitches once he breaks his prospect eligibility. But either way, Diego Cartaya is still in there. You got Michael Busch still in there. You got Dalton Rushing in there. Dalton Rushing, who was named to the Futures game, so you'll see him in Seattle. Gavin Stone's in there. Andy Pages still in there. And Emmett Sheehan's in there. Ryan Pepio's still in there. And number 95, Nick Frasso. So, yeah, Def, that's 9 guys in the top 100. There's still a lot of prospects that we've talked about, even on this show, that we weren't named there. So what can the Dodgers do with all this prospect depth?
Yeah. First, I want to address Kevin's point. I don't think Miguel Vargas is going anywhere. I think the Dodgers are too high on him, and they would be selling low based on his big league potential. I mean, if somebody wanted to trade him like the top prospect he was, maybe. But yeah, I think he's kind of in the same boat that Gavin Lux was for a year or two, where he was too valuable to them because they knew his potential, so they didn't trade him because they didn't want to sell low on him. But yeah, I mean, you could look at that list, and I mean, there's 5 starting pitchers, 5 right-handed starting pitchers on this prospect list. Plus, there's another 3 or 4 that we know are having great seasons in the minor leagues that aren't on this list. And so, just logistically speaking, there's not room for all those guys because they also have guys who are in the big leagues right now, you know. And so, I don't think Bobby Miller's going anywhere. I'd be surprised if Emmett Sheehan went anywhere. You know, Kevin mentions Gavin Stone. I could see it, but again, I feel like they'd be selling low a little bit. Like if they trade him, it would be because his star has dropped a little bit because of his poor performance in the big leagues. And you know, I guess it depends on what they see for the future for him. I would guess that unless there's a big name traded, you know, obviously Shohei Ohtani, you know, almost everything's on the table. A Corbin Burns type or a Lucas Giolito, you know, there's more guys on the table. But I would guess that most of the Dodgers trade activity will be guys who aren't in these 9 in the top 100. You know, but you know, would it surprise me to see Ryan Pepio traded? No, wouldn't surprise me at all. Gavin Stone wouldn't surprise me. Nick Frasso might surprise me a little bit just because I feel like Frasso might have a clearer path to the big leagues as a reliever. Frasso might be a guy they could, if they're looking to trade for a relief pitcher, they might be better off just calling up Nick Frasso, you know? And they have a few guys like that in the minor leagues who maybe could fill a role this year. So I feel like that's what they're going to be weighing is, are we getting something for this guy that we can't get elsewhere? And so unless it's big names, I think the Dodgers might just logistically speaking, they have kind of a 40-man roster crunch coming because they have such a deep farm system. They are going to have to make some trades. Simply, they're not going to have room for all these guys on the 40-man roster. And so I think they're going to have to do some bulk trades where it's, okay, we'll give you 2 guys for Andrew McCutchen, and we'll give you, 4 guys for Corbin Burns, or, whatever it is, whoever the names are. I think we'll see some quality, but more quantity would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, that makes the most sense because they are going to have a lot of decisions to make in the offseason already. They can ease some of those decisions by unloading some of that depth here at the deadline and at least help yourself for this season. Because if let's just say they don't do anything or they deem prices too exorbitant or whatever it is, you're going to lose guys for nothing in the offseason because there's not enough roster spots to hold all these guys or at least hold all the ones that you would want to keep. And yeah, we're at June 26th, so we're like, little more than a month left till the trade deadline, and there hasn't really been any other names emerging, but there's always going to be somebody that emerges that wasn't on the radar, or a team decides to sell last minute. Like, I don't think the Padres and Mets will sell, and I don't think they'd want to trade with the Dodgers anyways. But in a month, I mean, the Mets are 8 games out of a playoff spot right now. Like, they're 8 games out of the third wild card. The Padres are 6.5 out of a playoff spot right now. In 2 weeks, they could be 10 games back, and they might decide, what, we do need to trade. And yeah, like I said, I don't think the Padres would trade with the Dodgers, but they do have starting pitchers that could help the Dodgers potentially. I don't, the Dodgers are not going to take on Yu Darvish's contract, but Blake Snell's a guy who would be a rental that could be available. It would be interesting, kind of full circle moment, I guess, if that happened. The Mets, Scherzer and Verlander might be too pricey for the Dodgers, but you never know. Like, maybe they decide to go for it or go back on. I don't think it'll happen, but I do think there's going to be teams like that end up selling, and the Dodgers maybe not the big guy that, Scherzer, Verlander, someone like that, but maybe somebody else that's on that roster that they think could help out and they go after. You're on mute.
Can you imagine if Dave Roberts got to pull Blake Snell from a World Series game too early? That would be so much fun. Maybe Juan Soto, like if Soto's not going to, or if the Padres aren't going to win, Soto's not going to want to sign with them in free agency. That would be a good way for the Padres to rebuild some of their farm system. Juan Soto isn't exactly what the Dodgers are looking for, but he's probably a guy you make room for.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, who knows at this point? Because especially like a team like the Padres, they are in, there's no salary cap in baseball, but they have a lot of financial commitments to like 6-7 guys over the next 5 years or 5 years plus. They don't really have the farm system anymore to, let's just say they're 8 games back. Like, do you trade Jackson Merrill and Ethan Salah? Like, those are the 2 guys that they have left. Like, do you trade a young shortstop and a 16-year-old playing in, in low A or high A or low A? At this point, like, is it worth it? Probably not. And, could Juan Soto bring you back and restock that top 10 of your farm system? Yeah, it could. So it's very possible. And then, there's other teams that are going to be like that, but those 2 guys stand out. And, there's teams like the Reds that are now maybe thinking about buying. So like it all kind of convolutes into itself of, we still don't know what's going to happen June 26th. Like, I feel like this year's deadline is going to come down to the last week, leaving last 2 days, more so than years past, where it's just like teams decide last minute, like, what, we just lost this series. We're now 8 games out. Okay, let's sell and try to get it all done in the last minute.
Yeah. Speaking of the Reds, my brother proposed an Austin Barnes for Ellie De La Cruz trade. Who do you think says no on that one?
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone would say no to that. I mean,
Can't hurt to ask, right?
Yeah. It would help baseball in general. You can't Ellie De La Cruz in Los Angeles.
He needs a bigger stage. Yep.
Yeah. Rob Manfred, push it through, and Jeff won't make fun of you for like a week.
You can't spell Ellie De La Cruz without LA and a bunch of other letters like Ellie Day and Cruz.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we got a couple more questions, still trade deadline related. That's what's coming for you. So keep it locked on Dodgers. Okay, I'll just stick with the question asking here. We'll go with one with a name we haven't heard from Diggs at Matthew Digby 22. He says, "Is Tyler Anderson a Dodger before the trade deadline passes?"
I assume he means Tim Anderson. Uh,
Oh,
uh,
he spelled Anderson wrong either way, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it just says T. Anderson. I was actually going to make a joke that he was talking about Tyler Anderson, but I'm assuming he's talking about Tim Anderson.
Yeah, that makes more sense actually.
I think the answer is no either way. I think it's a firm no on Tyler Anderson, although he's only been good with the Dodgers. So, maybe they could get him back for cheap. But Tim Anderson, I think it would come down to, do the Dodgers think that they see something in him that is the reason why he's been struggling this year? His OPS plus is 56 this year. He has 0 home runs, only 9 extra base hits in 229 plate appearances. Like his slugging percentage is 282. His on base percentage is 279. Both of those are ridiculously bad. And so unless the Dodgers actually see, if they saw something, oh, he is just doing this wrong, we think that our hitting crew could fix him, and the White Sox are willing to sell low on him, then maybe. But the fact is, Tim Anderson is still a big star, a big name, and it's hard to see the White Sox really giving much of a discount on him. So unless he was packaged with a Lucas Giolito or a Dylan Cease or something, I just don't really see it. I don't think.
Yeah, I forgot about T. I don't know why my mind went to Tyler Anderson, but the Angels are playing well ish and are fighting for a playoff spot. And I don't think there's any way Artie Moreno goes into sell mode. So that one doesn't. But yeah, Tim Anderson, it sounded great at the start of the season. It felt great after the World Baseball Classic. Still, like, oh man, he looked pretty good. He played second base if they needed to move whatever. But just the way it's going, and it's always one of those where, does he need a change of scenery, blah blah blah, and maybe that could help out, and that's what the Dodgers would bank on, I'd hope. But you also aren't paying for as the Dodgers, they wouldn't pay for what they think Tim Anderson can be. They're paying for what he's been so far this season. And I don't think the White Sox would want to do that. Now, like you said, as part of a bigger package where, Giolito would be a guy that you have to give up some type of prospect capital for. And then at that point, you just tack on an extra guy from that depth we talked about earlier, and then say, hey, you know what, throw Tim Anderson in there as well. And we'll throw in a couple of guys that will be maybe a top 100 prospect in the next couple of years, potentially. So that's the way it goes. But yeah, I just don't see it. And at this point, I think, and we'll kind of touch on this on the next question, I think the Dodgers' best way to acquire a better bat is not going to be a shortstop at this point.
Yeah, I think that's right. Tim Anderson would look good in Dodger blue, though.
Yeah, facts.
All right, our last question that we'll dig into, Jerry at Jerry_J_Via. Will the Dodgers go after another right-handed bat at the deadline? I can't help but feel that a good contact right-handed bat is something that will help tremendously.
Yeah, a bat is always going to help. And that's something they're going to be looking for. And like I said, it's going to be probably more so, they're going to look for any right-handed bat that's not a first baseman. Actually, they could look for a third baseman realistically. And, if Vargas continues to struggle, Muncy just goes back to second base and they fill it out that way. So I guess basically anybody but a full-time first baseman or full-time DH is on the table, or catcher, I guess, is on the table. I guess they could upgrade catcher, but it wouldn't be somebody that impacts the game that much. So yeah, basically anybody but first or catcher or DH would be someone to find. And like I said, I don't think there's anyone right now that sounds like has emerged, or McCutchen was a name that dropped today, and obviously he would fit that mold. but I think that's where it's going to come from. Some of these teams that, are close right now might end up falling double-digit games out of a playoff spot in the next month or so. And then, okay, now you're scouring for who's on that roster, who's on that team, who could help us out. We don't care really, what position he plays as long as he can hit. Right-handed is probably the more ideal way, but it's also, if it's a guy that can just hit, it doesn't matter righty, lefty. Although I feel like there's not as many of those left-handed hitters that are going to be available that are just like, oh yeah, this guy can hit no matter what. So the fact of the matter is that just based on the raw numbers, it's going to come down to a right-handed hitter.
Yeah, I agree with that principle. When Bryce Harper was a free agent, people were saying, yeah, but Dodgers don't need another left-hander. They need a righty. And I'm like, no, Bryce Harper can hit. Like, Bryce Harper is a guy, you don't worry about what hand he hits with because he hits righties, he hits lefties. But yeah, Juan Soto would be that type. But yeah, it's not likely that there will be any of those superstar hit both sides. We probably are looking at some sort of role player, a guy like Andrew McCutchen or, something like that. And part of the problem with, all these questions about the trade deadline is like the point you made earlier, nobody's really selling yet. Like, I mean, the A's, I'm sure, would be ready to sell, but the reason they're so bad is because they don't have any good big leaguers. The Royals maybe, but they have all young players, and so they're not going to trade Bobby Witt Jr. It's the teams that are ready to sell because they're bad, and they're bad because they don't have good big leaguers. And so we're going to have to wait until closer to the deadline when teams like the Brewers start having to make a call. Okay, are we, are the Reds for real, or are we really in this? Padres have to make a call. A bunch of teams like the Mets, even that these teams have to make a call. What are we going to do? And those teams just aren't ready yet in late June.
Yeah, and like I said, we're gonna keep getting trade deadline questions, and maybe this McCutchen thing starts kicking off rumors that start leading into that. But yeah, and even then, like you look at some of these teams and the guys that you think could help, it's gonna be the name that stands out to me because it happened last year at the trade deadline is like JD Davis. Now, in that trade, Darren Ruff was probably the guy that was expected more to be the impact player for the Mets. And they kind of had given up. The Mets had given up on JD Davis. He went to the Giants. He did well for the Giants last year. He's doing very well for the Giants this year. It's a guy like that, what we've had guys like that before, maybe not quite as high impact, but like, Justin Ruggiano was like the lefty killer that one year. Like guys like that where they can hit lefties, and the Dodgers have tried to add some of those guys to the roster. Minor league deals didn't quite work out, but I think that's where they're going to live when it comes to a bat. I don't really see a big name back going right now. But like I said, there's a month left. A lot can happen. A team falls out of contention. I know it wouldn't help the Dodgers, but like, Paul Goldschmidt's name's been started and get thrown out there for somebody that could get traded because the Cardinals are so bad, and maybe they want to move forward from there. He doesn't help the Dodgers because they don't need a first baseman or a DH, but maybe the Cardinals just say, hey, you know what, let's go all in, and maybe Nolan Arenado becomes available. Like, you never know. Like, there crazier things have happened in baseball when it comes down to the trade deadline. So
yeah, and make JD Martinez play the outfield, Paul Goldschmidt at DH. Make it happen.
That's possible. If you got those three guys in the lineup, Freddie and JD and Paul Goldschmidt, you can get away with a little bit of defense. The Phillies did it last year with Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos on the outfield.
Yep.
So, thank you for your guys' questions, and that's gonna do it. Unless you have anything else you want to add, Jeff.
No, I'm good.
That's good for today. The Dodgers are back for the rest of the week. They'll be playing the Royals and the Rockies, so should be able to take advantage and win some games and maybe catch up to the D-backs as we head closer to the All-Star break. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Make sure to check us out on SiriusXM or the SXM app. All you got to do is search for Dodgers. Locked On Dodgers. You can also search for Dodgers to listen to the home broadcast of any game on those. Wherever you find podcasts, YouTube, Locked On Dodgers, how you can find us. We are on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincents91. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, check my Advice Way podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.